This is Monterey Bay, a protected marine sanctuary along California's central coast, where kelp forests shelter one of the most closely monitored wildlife populations in North America. For decades, the southern sea otter has been the face of coastal conservation. Biologists track nearly every individual. They know their foraging routes, their resting beds, their pups. Then, necropsy reports began coming back with findings that made no sense. Healthy adult otters were washing ashore with massive brain inflammation and body fat turned hard and yellow, not injured by boat propellers, not bitten by great white sharks. Scientists went looking for the source. What they found was not an ocean pathogen, not an industrial chemical spill, and not a toxic algae bloom. It was a land parasite called Toxoplasma gondii that requires a terrestrial host to reproduce, and the trail led straight out of the ocean, through storm drains, and directly into American backyards. The southern sea otter is a keystone species that nearly disappeared in the early 20th century. By the time international treaties banned commercial fur hunting in 1911, fewer than 50 animals survived off the rugged cliffs of Big Sur. Over a century of strict federal protection brought that number back to roughly 3,000 individuals. But for the past 20 years, that recovery has stalled. The population hit an invisible ceiling it cannot seem to break through. Biologists trying to understand why began conducting systematic autopsies on every stranded carcass along the California coastline. What pathologist Dr. Melissa Miller and her research team discovered inside those carcasses shocked the marine science community. Up to 17% of all dead sea otters recovered in California showed active lethal brain inflammation caused by Toxoplasma gondii, the same land parasite already named at the crime scene. Here is the problem that baffled researchers: Toxoplasma gondii is not a marine organism. It has never evolved in the sea. In fact, the parasite has a strict biological requirement. It can infect almost any warm-blooded animal on Earth, but it can only sexually reproduce and create its infectious egg stage, known as an oocyst inside the digestive tract of one specific family of animals, felids. Cats. There are no wild marine felids in the Pacific Ocean. That meant every single infectious parasite, destroying the brains of California sea otters, originated on land inside the gut of a cat miles away from the coastline. The mechanics of how a land-based parasite reaches an offshore marine mammal are both extraordinarily simple and devastatingly efficient. When an infected domestic cat or wild felid defecates, it sheds hundreds of millions of microscopic oocysts in its feces over a period of just 2 weeks. These oocysts are not fragile biological material. They possess a thick, chemically resistant outer wall that protects them against temperature extremes, UV radiation, and standard municipal wastewater treatment processes. Chlorine does not kill them. Standard water filtration does not stop them. When winter storms hit coastal California, rainwater washes across suburban lawns, feral cat colonies, and city streets. It pours into the Salinas and Pajaro River watersheds and rushes through municipal storm drains, which bypass water treatment facilities entirely and empty directly into coastal estuaries and bays. Once those oocysts hit saltwater, they do not dissolve. They can survive in marine environments for over 2 years, drifting in the surf zone. And that is where the sea otter's biology turns against it. A southern sea otter does not have a thick layer of insulating blubber, like a seal or a whale, to stay warm in cold Pacific waters. It relies on the densest fur of any mammal on Earth and a metabolic rate 3 times higher than a land animal of similar size. To fuel that internal furnace, an adult otter must consume up to 25% of its total body weight in seafood every single day. Its primary diet consists of marine invertebrates, mussels, clams, crabs, and turban snails. Many of these invertebrates are filter feeders. A single mussel pumps gallons of seawater through its gills every day, straining out organic matter. In the process, it traps and concentrates Toxoplasma oocysts inside its tissues without becoming sick itself. The shellfish acts as a living biological sponge for the parasite. When a sea otter dives into a kelp forest and eats dozens of mussels in a single feeding session, it is not just eating shellfish. It is ingesting a hyper-concentrated dose of a terrestrial parasite engineered to survive inside mammalian tissue. Once inside the otter, the parasite breaks through the intestinal wall, enters the bloodstream, and migrates directly to the central nervous system and heart muscle. It forms cysts in the brain tissue, triggering severe meningoencephalitis. An infected otter loses its neuromuscular coordination. It suffers violent tremors and seizures. It loses the ability to dive for food, groom its dense insulating fur, or escape approaching predators. Researchers found that many otters recorded as shark mortalities were actually animals crippled by brain parasites, floating helpless on the surface where great whites patrol the kelp canopy. But here is the part the conservation reports buried in the footnotes. For years, scientists considered this a chronic, slow-moving condition. Between 2020 and 2025, that changed. The parasite mutated, and what had been slow stopped being slow entirely. Pathologists monitoring California's central coast began recovering prime age, exceptionally healthy adult otters that had died within days of infection. When Dr. Miller examined the tissue, the damage went far beyond the brain. The animals exhibited severe, widespread steatosis, a condition where virtually all body fat becomes inflamed, necrotic, and hard. Genetic sequencing revealed the culprit was a rare, hyperviolent genotype known as the COUG strain. Originally isolated from mountain lions in the Pacific Northwest, the COUG strain had never been documented in marine wildlife or along the California coast. Unlike typical strains that cause gradual neurological decline, this variant attacks multiple organ systems simultaneously, destroying healthy adipose tissue and killing robust adult animals in the prime of their reproductive lives. A follow-up study confirmed that lethal COUG strain infections continued killing California otters in subsequent years, proving that this hypervirulent variant is now actively circulating in the coastal ecosystem. Most wildlife declines are blamed on direct habitat loss, commercial overfishing, or ocean pollution. But here, the primary driver is an indirect domestic pathway that connects suburban households to an endangered ocean predator. There are over 80 million domestic cats in the United States, alongside tens of millions of feral felines. When cat owners flush used litter down toilets or allow outdoor cats to roam freely, they introduce millions of indestructible biological vectors directly into coastal runoff systems. The state of California recognized the severity of this connection when it passed Assembly Bill 2485, requiring all cat litter sold in the state to carry explicit warning labels advising consumers never to flush litter into toilets or wash it into storm drains. Yet the runoff continues. The destruction of coastal wetlands, which once acted as natural biofilters by trapping sediments and pathogens before they reached the sea, has created an unobstructed superhighway from suburban pavement to kelp forest. The danger is not confined to wildlife. Marine biologists consider sea otters sentinels of coastal health. Because otters consume the same shellfish humans harvest from commercial fisheries, an outbreak in otters is an early warning for human food supplies. In humans, Toxoplasma infection can cause severe neurological damage, congenital defects, and chronic ocular disease. When a land parasite saturates coastal waters to the point of killing marine mammals, it signals that runoff entering our bays carries biological risks municipal infrastructure was never designed to handle. When otters die, the ecological consequences ripple across the entire marine environment. As a keystone predator, the sea otter keeps sea urchin populations in check. When otter numbers drop, urchin populations explode, clear-cutting the holdfasts of giant kelp forests and converting vibrant underwater ecosystems into barren deserts. Kelp forests absorb carbon, buffer coastlines from storm erosion, and provide nursery habitat for commercial fish. Long-term surveillance by the USGS and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife confirmed that the highest infection spikes correlate with major storm seasons. When river discharge dumps billions of gallons of unfiltered runoff into the sea, the health of the entire nearshore Pacific depends on an animal whose population remains pinned at 3,000. What began as a mystery in Monterey Bay turned out to be a demonstration of how thin the boundary between land and ocean really is. The southern sea otter remains listed as threatened under the Endangered Species Act. Sea otter conservation, it turns out, is not just a marine science problem. It begins on land.